Hello and welcome to Indus News live from Islamabad. I am Muneeb Hamid with the news of this hour. Let's begin with the headlines first. Pakistan's Prime Minister Imran Khan has warned against setting hasty timelines for the intra-Afghan talks and a hurried international withdrawal from Afghanistan. In his article published in the Washington Post, Khan said a bloodless deadlock in negotiations is infinitely better than a bloodshed on the battlefield. He also warned against regional spoilers who are not invested in peace and see instability in Afghanistan as advantageous for their own geopolitical ends. Armenia says Azerbaijan has attacked civilian settlements in the disputed Nagorno-Karabakh region. In a statement, Armenia's defense ministry said its military downed 2 of Azerbaijan's helicopters and 3 drones in response to the attack. Tensions between the 2 countries escalated in July after border clashes claimed the lives of 11 Azerbaijani and 5 Armenian soldiers. Damascus has accused Washington of using sanctions to suffocate the Syrians like George Floyd, who was choked to death. Addressing the UN General Assembly, Syria's Deputy Prime Minister Walid al-Mualim said the inhumane curbs are impeding Syrians and their livelihoods. Washington maintains the measures aim to pressure Syria's President Bashar al-Assad into UN-led talks to end the 8-year-long conflict. Belarus has accused Western nations of attempting to sow chaos and anarchy in the country. Addressing the United Nations General Assembly, Belarusian Foreign Minister said interference in the country's internal affairs is harmful for everyone. Earlier, French President Emmanuel Macron said President Alexander Lukashenko has to step down amid protests. India's coronavirus tally has surpassed 6 million after registering more than 85,000 new infections and over 1,000 deaths overnight. In Pakistan, 6 people have died of the virus in the past 24 hours, taking the toll to 6,457, with over 310,000 infections. Globally, the virus has infected more than 32.7 million people and claimed over 993,000 lives so far. News coming in detail after a short break. Stay tuned. Welcome back. Now let's have the news in detail. We'll start from Pakistan, where Prime Minister Imran Khan has warned against setting hasty timelines for the intra-Afghan talks and a hurried international withdrawal from Afghanistan. In his article published in the Washington Post, Khan said a bloodless deadlock in negotiations is infinitely better than a bloodshed on the battlefield. He also warned against regional spoilers who are not invested in peace and see instability in Afghanistan as advantageous for their own geopolitical ends. The Prime Minister said Pakistan will continue to support the Afghan people in their quest for a unified, independent and sovereign Afghanistan. He said Pakistan believes peace negotiations should not be conducted under coercion and urges all parties to reduce violence. Imran Khan urged the Taliban to recognize the progress Afghanistan has made, just as the Afghan government has recognized the Taliban as a political reality. Now, the Pakistan Army says a soldier has been martyred in unprovoked Indian firing in the Koko-Tirera sector along the line of control. The military's media wing said the Pakistan Army effectively responded to the aggression, inflicting heavy losses on the Indian side. Pakistan's Foreign Office said there have been over 2,300 ceasefire violations by the Indian Army since January. The Indian occupation forces along the LOC have been continuously targeting civilian populated areas with artillery fire. Meanwhile, 7 civilians have been killed and 10 others wounded in a car bomb explosion in Syria's northeastern Hasakah province. State media says the suspected militant attack occurred at the southern entrance of Ras Al Ain city. It said the blast rocked the industrial zone south of the city. Earlier, 2 civilians lost their lives in a similar incident in the northern Syria's town of Tal Halaf. Turkey's military conducted Operation Peace Spring in northeastern Syria last year to clear it from PKK militants to secure its borders. Now, Damascus has accused Washington of using sanctions to suffocate the Syrians like George Floyd, who was choked to death. Addressing the UN General Assembly, Deputy Prime Minister Walid al-Muallim said ban on medications is wasting human lives amid the pandemic. Al-Muallim said the sanctions were directly obstructing access to basic necessities such as food, heating, gas and electricity. Now, more news coming up in this bulletin after a short break. Stay tuned. Welcome back now. Iran's President Hassan Rouhani says presence of the United States armed forces is detrimental to the regional security and stability. Rouhani said getting US out of the region is the duty of all countries where its troops are present. In a meeting with Iraqi Foreign Minister Fuad Hussein, Rouhani said Iran stands by the government and people of Iraq to promote unity and solidarity. He said Iran has always supported Iraqi people and its legitimate government by providing assistance during terror attacks from ISIS in the country. Hussein conveyed warm greetings of the Iraqi President and Prime Minister to Rouhani and appreciated Iran for its assistance to the Iraqi people. Meanwhile, in Israel, thousands of people have staged a protest outside Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's residence in Jerusalem. They called for Netanyahu's resignation over allegations of corruption and his mishandling of the coronavirus pandemic. They held Israeli flags, blew horns and chanted slogans against Netanyahu. The Prime Minister was indicted on charges of bribery, fraud and breach of trust earlier this year. Netanyahu has dismissed the demonstrators as anarchists and accused local media of strengthening the protest by giving them heavy coverage. Moving on, Sudan says it does not want to link its removal from a U.S. terrorism list to normalization of relations with Israel. In a press conference, Prime Minister Abdallah Hamdok said the country is facing hindrance to foreign funding due to the U.S. terrorism list. He said the topic of normalizing ties with Israel needs a deep discussion. Earlier, the United States officials indicated that they wanted Khartoum to follow the UAE and Bahrain to open ties with Israel. Sudan was put on the U.S. list in 1993 because Washington believed former ruler Omar al-Bashir's regime was supporting militant groups. The UN has condemned clashes between two armed groups in a residential suburb of Tripoli. In a statement, the UN support mission in Libya expressed concern over the fighting in the eastern suburb of Tajora. The mission said it reminds all parties of their obligations in accordance with international humanitarian law. The clashes broke out between two militias loyal to the UN-recognized government of National Accord. Defense Minister Salah Eddin Al-Namroj has ordered the two groups to be disbanded as he threatened to use force. Tajora suffered damage after Eastern strongman Khalifa Haftar launched an offensive against Tripoli in April last year. Now moving to Somalia, where at least 16 Al-Shabaab militants have been killed in a military operation near the capital Mogadishu. Speaking to reporters, a military spokesperson said 40 captive children were also rescued during the operation. He said the insurgents plan to use the kidnapped children as suicide bombers. The region's security officials have vowed to continue targeting Al-Shabaab militants. Now, India's coronavirus tally has surpassed 6 million after registering more than 85,000 new infections and over 1,000 deaths overnight. Globally, the virus has infected more than 32.7 million people and claimed over 993,000 lives so far. Coronavirus cases in Colombia have surpassed 800,000 a day after deaths climbed above 25,000. Meanwhile, Australia's virus epicenter, Victoria, is accelerating to ease social distancing restrictions as infections slow to fewer than 20 cases a day. Victoria State Premier Daniel Andrews said the state reported 16 COVID-19 cases in the past 24 hours.
We are ahead of schedule. We have made more progress than we had hoped to make at this point in time. Now, that is something that we can all be pleased about, but it doesn't mean this is over. Today we're going to take some safe and steady steps. It's not everything that Victorians would want, but it is what is safe at this point in time.
Meanwhile, in Pakistan, 6 people have died overnight due to the COVID-19, taking the toll to 6,457. The Health Ministry reported 694 new infections since yesterday, raising the number of active cases to 8,205. The ministry said with a 95% recovery rate, over 295,000 patients have recovered from the disease. Sindh is still the most hit province with more than 135,000 infections, while over 99,000 cases have been reported in Punjab province so far. The National Command and Operations Centre said 735 hospitals are providing facilities to 924 patients admitted across the country. And Pakistan's Defence Minister Pervez Khattak has witnessed multinational military exercises Kaz 2020 at Russia's southern city of Astrakhan. Khattak also met Pakistani and Chinese participants of the military exercises. Army's Chief of Logistics Staff, Lieutenant General Azhar Saleh Abbasi, was also part of the Pakistan delegation. Delegates from various participating countries were present on the occasion. Earlier, Pakistan Army Media's Wing, ISPR, said the exercise is aimed at assessing the ability of troops to react to various challenges. It said the exercises offer an opportunity for troops to learn from each other's experiences. Moving on, Armenia says Azerbaijan has attacked civilian settlements in the disputed Nagorno-Karabakh region. In a statement, Armenia's defense ministry said its military downed 2 of Azerbaijan's helicopters and 3 drones in response to the attack. The ministry said it will deliver a proportionate response to any act of aggression. Armenia's foreign ministry also condemned the aggression, saying Baku is ready for both the military and political responses. Meanwhile, Azerbaijan's defense ministry said it launched a military operation along the contact line between both countries. The ministry said only one of its helicopters was hit, but its crew survived the attack. The 29-year-long conflict between the two countries escalated in July after border clashes claimed the lives of 11 Azerbaijani and 5 Armenian soldiers. Now, police and anti-COVID-19 restrictions protesters have clashed in central London against coronavirus restrictions. The Metropolitan Police said the protests had to be stopped because the crowd was not complying with social distancing. London Mayor Sadiq Khan said the reckless and violent behaviour of some protesters has left hard-working police officers injured. Protests organised by campaign groups including Save Our Right UK was called to mark 6 months since the passage of the Coronavirus Act. At least 3 protesters and 9 officers were injured while 16 people were arrested. Earlier, British Prime Minister Boris Johnson said he is giving a 30% increase in funding for the World Health Organization. Addressing the UN General Assembly session virtually, Johnson said reforms must be made to the global health body.
And it is precisely because we know that no one is safe until everyone is safe that I can announce that the UK will contribute up to £571 million to COVAX, a new initiative designed to distribute a COVID vaccine across the world.
Now, Belarus has accused Western nations of attempting to sow chaos and anarchy in the country. Addressing the UN General Assembly, Belarusian Foreign Minister Vladimir Makai said interference in the country's internal affairs is harmful for everyone. Makai said there are attempts to destabilize the situation in the country. He said the concern for Belarusian well-being by Western nations has been brimming with cynicism. Earlier, French President Emmanuel Macron said President Alexander Lukashenko has to step down amid the protest. The United States, United Kingdom and Canada have announced imposing sanctions on Lukashenko and his companions over allegations of rigging polls and assaulting protesters. Now, North Korea has warned South Korea against violating its western maritime border. North Korean state media said Pyongyang will organize a search operation for the Seoul's officials' body itself and will hand it over if found. The state media said any intrusion into North's territory may lead to another awful incident. The warning comes after South Korean scouts went searching for the body of their official killed by Pyongyang earlier this week. Earlier, Seoul urged Pyongyang to conduct an unprecedented joint investigation into the incident to establish the facts. Pyongyang said it shot at the man intruding into the North's waters and burned the floating material, carrying the man to contain the spread of COVID-19. And that is the end of the bulletin. For the latest updates, you can follow us on social media at indus.news. Take care.